Caught my wife cheating with her boss, found out the baby she gave birth to isn't mine, so I told his wife and everything exploded from there. Hey Reddit. So here's how it all started. I've been married to my wife, Sarah, for 8 years. We had what I thought was a good relationship. We were your average couple, occasional arguments, date nights when we could, and a shared dream of starting a family. About a year ago, Sarah got a new job at a small marketing firm. She was excited about the position, and I was genuinely happy for her. The pay was better, and she seemed really motivated. Little did I know that this new chapter in her career would bring devastation to our marriage. Things started to change about 6 months after Sarah started her new job. She began working late more often, taking sudden weekend trips for what she called work-related events, and became increasingly secretive with her phone. I didn't think too much of it at first because I trusted her. She had never given me a reason not to. But then, the small red flags began to pile up. One night, she came home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. When I asked her about it, she laughed it off and said she hugged a male coworker goodbye after a long day at work. Another time, she left her phone on the counter, and a message popped up from someone named Mike. It was a simple goodnight message, but it felt a little too personal. Still, I shrugged it off, convincing myself I was overthinking. Things escalated when Sarah became pregnant. At first, I was over the moon. We had been trying to have a baby for over a year with no success, so when she broke the news, I was ecstatic. But something about the timing didn't sit right with me. Around the time she supposedly conceived, she had been away for a weekend team building retreat. Call it paranoia, but a nagging feeling in my gut told me something was off. Fast forward to 3 months later. Sarah had been distant throughout her pregnancy, but I chalked it up to hormones and stress. Then one day, she left her phone unlocked while she was in the shower. I don't usually snoop, but curiosity got the better of me. That's when I found the messages. Mike wasn't just a coworker. He was her boss. The texts were explicit, filled with plans to meet up, declarations of love, and worst of all, discussions about the baby. One message from him read, "Are you sure he won't suspect anything about the baby?" I froze. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My entire world came crashing down in an instant. After the initial shock wore off, I copied all the messages and screenshots and sent them to my email. I didn't confront Sarah right away. Instead, I booked an appointment with a lawyer and scheduled a paternity test for when the baby was born. I needed proof, not just of her infidelity, but also of the baby's parentage. The day the baby was born was bittersweet. I held her in my arms, a beautiful little girl, but I couldn't shake the doubt in my heart. A few weeks later, I received the results of the paternity test. She wasn't mine. The confirmation hit me like a freight train. As much as I had prepared myself for this outcome, seeing it in black and white was devastating. That night, I confronted Sarah. I told her I knew about the affair and the baby not being mine. At first, she denied everything, but when I showed her the screenshots and the test results, her face went pale. She broke down, apologizing and begging for forgiveness, saying she had made a mistake. She claimed she loved me and wanted to make things right, but I couldn't even look at her. What made matters worse was that I had learned Mike was married. His wife, Laura, had no idea what was going on. Part of me wanted to keep it that way, to walk away and let Sarah deal with the mess she created. But the other part of me, the part that was furious and betrayed, felt that Laura deserved to know the truth. The next day, I reached out to Laura. I wasn't sure how to approach her, but I decided to keep it simple. I sent her an email with all the evidence I had gathered, along with a message that read, "I think you deserve to know what's been going on." About an hour later, she called me. She was sobbing, barely able to speak. She thanked me for telling her and said she had suspected something was off but didn't have any proof. We ended up talking for hours, sharing our pain and betrayal. Laura was a lot stronger than I expected. She filed for divorce almost immediately and exposed Mike at their workplace. Apparently, he had a history of inappropriate behavior, and my evidence was the final nail in the coffin. He lost his job, his reputation, and, eventually, custody of his children from his marriage with Laura. As for Sarah, she moved out of our home and stayed with a friend. I filed for divorce shortly after, and while she tried to fight for reconciliation, I knew there was no going back. The aftermath of everything was messy, as expected. Friends and family were shocked when they found out, but most were supportive of my decision to leave. Sarah eventually stopped trying to win me back and focused on raising her daughter, who I genuinely hope will have a better life than the mess she was born into. As for me, it took a long time to heal. I went to therapy, leaned on my close friends, and eventually started to rebuild my life. One unexpected silver lining was the friendship I formed with Laura. We kept in touch, not out of shared pain, but because we genuinely liked each other's company. Over time, our friendship grew into something more. I never thought I'd find love again after everything, but Laura showed me that it was possible. Looking back, I'm still angry at how things turned out, but I've learned to let go of the resentment. Life has a way of throwing curveballs, and while this was one of the hardest experiences I've ever endured, it taught me a lot about myself and what I deserve. For anyone going through something similar, my advice is this: trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and don't settle for less than you deserve. Update. After my initial post and reading through the advice and shared experiences made me realize how common betrayal can be, but it didn't make it any less painful. I decided to take a few steps forward, and as messy as it was, I wanted to provide more clarity about what happened next. After Sarah moved out, things were tense. I won't lie, there were moments when I doubted myself. The thought of 8 years together, the memories we shared, and the dreams we once had made it difficult to completely shut her out. She continued to reach out, sending long messages and emails apologizing, begging for another chance, and blaming her actions on stress, low self-esteem, and even postpartum depression. She claimed Mike manipulated her, that he preyed on her vulnerabilities. While I sympathized with her struggles, I couldn't ignore the fact that she made choices that shattered our marriage. We had to meet a few times to sort out the divorce details. Each meeting was like reopening a wound. She would start crying and saying how much she regretted everything. She even told me she wanted to go to therapy to work on herself and begged me to consider couples counseling. I stayed firm, though. I told her that forgiveness might come with time, but trust was gone, and there was no rebuilding without it. One conversation sticks out. Sarah asked me if I could ever love her daughter as my own. I was floored. I told her I wasn't ready to answer that question and that it wasn't fair to put me in that position. I didn't want to punish an innocent child, but the circumstances of her conception were a constant reminder of the betrayal. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what kind of life that baby would have, caught in the middle of this mess. I also had to deal with mutual friends who didn't know the full story. Some sided with Sarah, saying everyone makes mistakes and that I should give her a chance because of the child. Others were supportive of my decision to walk away. Another update. Laura and I continued to keep in touch. After her bombshell divorce filing, Mike lost everything. His firing from the marketing firm hit him hard because it wasn't just about his affair with Sarah. Apparently, several other women at the company came forward with complaints of inappropriate behavior, and he was completely disgraced. Laura told me he tried to fight for shared custody of their 2 kids, but his reputation, combined with her evidence of infidelity, led to her getting full custody. One day, Laura called me with an idea. She suggested that we meet in person to discuss everything. We had been talking regularly over the phone and through emails, and there was this strange connection forming between us. It wasn't romantic at first, just 2 people who understood each other's pain and frustration. I agreed, and we met for coffee. Meeting Laura face to face was surreal. She was warm, strong, and resilient despite everything she had been through. We spent hours talking, not just about our exes, but about our lives, our interests, and even our hopes for the future. I felt a sense of comfort I hadn't experienced in months. It wasn't until our 3rd meeting that she brought up an idea I hadn't considered: what if we used our experiences to help others? She told me she had been documenting her journey for a blog she wanted to start. Her goal was to provide support and advice for people dealing with infidelity, divorce, and starting over. She asked if I wanted to contribute. At first, I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep revisiting my pain, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Sharing my story in a constructive way felt cathartic. We worked on the blog together for weeks, and it took off faster than we expected. People from all over the world shared their stories with us, and it felt good to know we were making a difference. Somewhere along the way, our partnership turned into something more. It wasn't a whirlwind romance, but a slow, steady connection built on mutual respect and understanding. Laura and I decided to take things one step at a time, cautious but optimistic. Final update. By the time the divorce with Sarah was finalized, I felt like a different person. The process had been draining, both emotionally and financially, but it was also a relief to finally close that chapter of my life. Sarah had initially fought for spousal support, but the judge ruled against it, citing her actions as the cause of the divorce. She still tried to reach out occasionally, sending me updates about her daughter and trying to build some sort of friendship. I told her I needed space and asked her to respect that. One unexpected twist came from my own family. My parents were heartbroken when they found out about the affair, but they had also bonded with Sarah over the years. When the truth came out, they supported me, but it was clear they struggled with the loss of the relationship too. My mom even suggested that I try to stay in the baby's life in some capacity, saying that the child wasn't at fault for what happened. I didn't have an answer for her. As for Laura and me, things continued to grow naturally. We weren't rushing into anything, but we were happy. Her kids were still adjusting to their new reality, and I made sure to take a back seat, letting them have the space they needed. It was strange, though every time I spent time with her family, it reminded me of the life I thought I'd have with Sarah. I realized that it wasn't just about the betrayal but the dreams that had been shattered. One day, while Laura and I were working on the blog, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. She said, "What do you think about second chances?" At first, I thought she was referring to us, but she clarified that she meant in general. Could people truly change after making monumental mistakes? I thought about Sarah, about the pain she caused me, and about her daughter. It was easy to dismiss her as someone who wrecked my life, but I also knew she was dealing with her own guilt and challenges. I told Laura that I didn't have an answer yet, but I hoped I could find forgiveness someday, not for Sarah's sake, but for my own. Today, I'm in a much better place. I've learned that life doesn't always go the way you plan, but it has a funny way of surprising you. The betrayal I experienced was devastating, but it also opened the door to new opportunities, new relationships, and a new version of myself. I'm not the same person I was before, and honestly, I'm grateful for that. For anyone still reading this, know that healing takes time, but it's possible. You don't have to have all the answers right away, and it's okay to feel angry, hurt, or lost. Just keep moving forward, one step at a time. That's all any of us can do.